Welcome to NCPDP Unscripted, the podcast where healthcare meets real talk. Each episode, we will dive into unscripted conversations with industry leaders, changemakers, and innovators, discussing the challenges, breakthroughs, and behind-the-scenes stories you won't hear anywhere else. Whether you're on your morning commute or taking a break between meetings, settle in because it's time to get unscripted.
Julian, what an interesting place to first meet someone is on a podcast. But welcome to NCPDP Unscripted. I am so glad you're here. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, number one. So Julian Herbert, I am Chief Product Officer at DoseSpot. I've been at DoseSpot for the past 3 years, and I've just watched it grow tremendously. When I joined, DoseSpot was specifically just an ePrescribing platform, and we've now shifted to ePrescribing, eligibility, patient adherence. My background and journey is all through tech, mostly in product, but I did do a couple stints in M&A on the pharma side, and a little bit as a developer, but quickly got out of that after a while as well. And so love product, love building for users and building for outcomes. And so I'm excited to be at DoseSpot and excited to chat about it a little bit here.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some lessons that you've learned? I think it was a year ago or so that there were some conversations around product management and e-prescribing. So what of those things that were talked about then are still relevant today or have maybe moved forward today?
Yeah, it's very interesting in the healthcare industry, where in most industries you want your customer to be on your platform for as long as possible, right? Like you keep showing them things, you bring them in, and you want to keep them there. Time on task is very important. But in healthcare, specifically with providers, you want them there in and out. Like your whole goal is efficiency, right? You want them to come in, do the thing they need to do, and get out, versus staying on your platform. That's actually much more detrimental. Similarly with customers and patients as well. You want them to get the information they need, quickly use it, and then go. And so that's been a transformation for me as I've come from other industries where it's like keep the user on the platform as long as possible, keep adding things for them to stay on the platform to actually no. You can add things, but you want it to be super efficient, and so that's how we've been measuring efficiency. And then I think the second thing is in healthcare, trust is such a big thing. And even out of the gate, so when you're launching like a MVP product, you want to show the trust. It's not as easy to kind of build forward. Doctors a lot of times give you one opportunity to make sure to show that this product is valuable, and then if it is and they trust it, then they're going to use it. If it's tough and you're saying, oh, we're working through some problems and things like that, you start to lose a lot of that usage. So for me, it's been one, experiment quickly, but make sure we experiment with the right level of MVP. And then number two, make sure that across my team, all of the products and services that we launch are super efficient and we're not adding time for providers to do the tasks that they need to do.
So walk me through what that might look like if you're testing a new feature or a new workflow for e-prescribing. What would that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually recently launched through pilot our patient-facing application, and we brought on two initial partners for our client partners, and both of them were very different in terms of their use cases. We had one that's very heavily focused on patients and volume, and they do a lot of them. We had others with very specific formulary, less volume, but very much more high, I guess you would say, value prescriptions. And seeing kind of that juxtaposition between the two was super interesting. And so what we did was we typically start with ask them who's your most kind of innovator, trial type of providers who give a lot of feedback, but they just like to test a lot of different things. And so we start there. We say, okay, we're going to start with them. And once we did that, we got a lot of feedback. And we actually got enough feedback, shut the project down, did a lot of work, and then relaunched it to that same provider group. And then the next step was like, okay, who's that next group of power users? We're like, okay, great. We tackled all of their use cases, and we're learning a lot of these fringe cases as well. And now we're at the point in the next probably month or so to launch it much more broadly. With like a lot of the marketing flair and all those things to increase utilization. And so I think the big goal for us was out of the gate with our pilots, not to really focus on, utilization and big volume numbers. It was like, are we solving the problem that we said we wanted to solve? Or we focus more on the outcome versus all of the kind of like tangible things that are associated with it. And we're starting to see a lot of traction. I was telling folks earlier that it's one of the first products in my career that you launch as a pilot very early, and your customers are like, turn it on. I want it all. I want it all. I want it all. To the point where my team was like, we can't handle that much volume yet. So like, let's kind of figure it out. But that's been super exciting, and it's gone pretty well.
That is so exciting for you and for your team. What a great accomplishment to
I
get
like
that
to think
kind of
that
feedback.
that's my, precipice of product management right there. But, we'll see.
I guess so. What are the biggest challenges that you've encountered in e-prescribing, specifically when it's patient-facing?
Yeah, I think for me and the team and DoseSpot in general, it's all of the use cases that tend to happen. So the rails that exist today are great at getting a prescription from point A to point B. But those rails were built with providers in mind, they were built with payers in mind, with PBMs in mind, and what we're running into now, and what you're seeing much more traction on now, is the patient, and really being patient-centric. And so one of the biggest hurdles that we have is really bringing everyone to the table to try to focus on how do we solve patients getting their medications with as much transparency as trust as they can. And unfortunately, that's been tougher than I expected it to be. I thought like, hey, we have a solid plan. We know why this patient or these patients are not picking up their medications or fulfilling their orders. And we need, help from these partners, this partner, this partner. And each time we get to like these kind of stalwarts where, like this partner has language that we can't use this data in a certain way that downstream impacts patients. And so I love the way that like NCPDP and other groups are testing and pushing the waters here of what's possible and what you can get to the patient. And I see that tide turning. Even in the past year, the conversations we're having now are very different than a year ago. A year ago, it was like, no, full stop. Now it's like, no, but like, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. And I think we're getting to that point, maybe even next year, where it's like, okay, maybe, and then yes, let's do it. And so our focus has been, we're going to push the envelope. We're going to join every pilot. We're going to test everything as much as we can. And we're going to lead that way and show the outcomes. And then we want partners who are not invested in it to be on the defensive and say, why are you not doing this? Versus we want you to come in. So much more offensive strategy versus defensive in our mind of like, we're going to launch this great solution for patients and providers. And we want you to stand up and say, we don't support that. Because I think that puts the pressure on the other parties to really play ball and really try to solve the problem for the patient.
That's how a diamond is made, right? You got to increase the pressure.
You got to increase the pressure.
Increase the pressure.
I'm going to steal that, by the way. So
You're welcome in advance. So when you start to think about that, what kind of workflow improvements have you seen really make a measurable impact? Or maybe what are some thoughts that you have on workflow improvements that you really feel could?
It's a great question. I think from what I see, a couple areas. Number one, I see the increase in price transparency. I think really pushing that price transparency down to the patients, even in our data, has shown that patients want that type of access, especially when it's simple and when they can make a decision. And even in our data, we're seeing patients make decisions based on price or convenience for them that I think a provider would not have made for them. And so I think seeing that happen and seeing what real-time prescription benefits has brought to the industry and starting to see that trust there, the next evolution of that question is like, okay, I know what it costs, but is it there? Do they have it? And so I think on the flip side of that, the opportunity is in availability and in stock and delivery dates and things like that, and really bringing that data forward in front of the patient. We've had some initial traction. We have a partnership with Amazon Pharmacy, and we're showing availability data there, and we're seeing a lot of traction there. We're seeing customers either make decisions regardless of price for convenience. Hey, if I can get it in 2 days or a day, and it might be slightly more expensive, I'll make that decision. or if even with the convenience, if the price is different, I might make a different decision. I may drive 5 miles, 10 miles out of the way to get this medication. And so I tend to see a lot more utilization. I tend to see a lot more questions being asked, like patients are asking us, like, I didn't know we could do this. I didn't know you guys had, my doctor had access to this pricing data, because we never talked about it that way. And so now I think the great thing is that we're getting much more kind of like very specific questions from our patients, which showing that we have an engaged audience, audience that wants to take control of this. They just didn't know they could.
Yeah, and that's really great. So as you're getting that feedback from them, how are you incorporating that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think number one, we are building it into the product, and we're taking that to our partners and pushing and using voice of the customer as the guide, the barometer for why we're asking for changes. Number two, we are joining things like this and being vocal about it and saying, hey, we believe this is kind of the future and the wave and the way things are going. Help us build this out, right? And then I think the third part is that we bring in our customers and ask them what they're seeing on the ground, right? I think I don't want DoseSpot and my team to sit in like an ivory tower and make decisions for everybody. I want the decisions to bubble up from the ground level up, and then we can make the changes that are necessary to do that. And I will be transparent, it's been tough. It's been difficult. You have to really dedicate time and resources and finances to solving these problems. But I think we've been able to invest in this area, which is great. And I see a lot more investment from us in 2026.
Well, now I've gotten something from you. I love that you're going to let it bubble up from the bottom instead of letting it come down from the top. That's just fantastic.
You can have that one too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That not two. That's the one I get. I already gave you
All
one,
right,
so now we're
right.
even.
We're even.
So we're even. So what about looking forward? What do you see as our next wave of e-prescribing innovation?
So I don't know if everyone's going to like this particular comment. So
I'm so excited
caveat
for this
it right
answer.
now. But what we've been seeing in our sales cycles and conversations I get into on our tech teams is this proliferation of, I guess you would say, AI prescribers in a way. There are providers or technology companies that are using AI agents as their proxies and prescribing agents that are setting up scripts now. And I think it's almost inevitable to where, like, especially given bandwidth and all those types of things, like, you're going to see, 1 or 2 NPIs prescribing a ton because they're using AI and becoming more efficient, because the goal is efficiency. And I think that's where the market is kind of in this divergent path. We want much more transparency and intimate data for the patient. On the provider side, there's a lot of changes upstream around efficiency and really trying to maximize the volume based on people's time and things like that. And so we're kind of headed to this kind of area where efficiency is also going to require the patient having much more control. Because at the end of the day, in my mind, if you put the controls in the hands of the people who care the most, like if I'm in pain, I want to solve that pain. But I also know my financial situation, I know my my travel situation, and all these things. So I am the one that's more likely to like shop around and make the right decision for what me and my family, right? Versus with these AI bots and things like that, it's going to be much more cookie cutter, right? And so I think right now we're at the point where we have to get this data downstream while these AI bots are being built, so that a patient can, if I go and I'm working with I might not even be talking to a human. I'm just, typing in a chat bot and say, this is what's going on. They say, okay, we're going to prescribe you this. Well, now I don't have a doctor to talk to about it, right? Like I don't have anyone to talk to about it, the pricing and all this stuff like that. So now that this is flowing downstream to me, I can make my choice regardless of that part upstream. And so I think you're seeing kind of 2 different diverging tactics going on, but they have an opportunity to come together if we do them correctly. You can't just do the AI prescribing part without giving the patient more empowerment, and you can't just give the patient more empowerment without kind of being more efficient at the provider level. And so merging those 2 together is going to be critical.
Yeah, I agree that not everyone is going to like that answer. And also, I think you're totally right. You know, I was at a conference actually just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the speakers gave an example of, you know, I was just curious what AI could do, and I started feeding it all of this information, and what it gave back to me was, oh, hey, at this time, you know, 2 years ago, you had these higher levels that indicate you might have allergies to a specific plant.
Wow.
And so they were able to actually identify, oh, it's because when I go back home and visit my mother where she lives, I actually have really bad allergies, and that's why I always get a migraine when I'm there. And so now they can prevent that migraine from occurring because they've figured out that, you know, and it comes down to when you use AI for that kind of stuff, that AI can really spend more time going through piece by piece and connecting things together much more than our physician can, or anyone can, even us sometimes, right? Because we don't all have time to sit and analyze each piece of that information.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. I think for me, it reminds me of like when I get a cold or I lose my voice and I go on like WebMD and I'm like, oh my gosh.
You're having a heart attack.
Yeah,
and dying.
exactly. And now though, with AI, you can put your data points in there associated with that. So it's not a generic recommendation. It becomes like a very specific, like, this is the reason why this is happening to you based on labs or whatever you want to put in there. And so I think you're going to get a patient that's much more intelligent because they have the data at their hands. And now, in the past, when you could just say, hey, I'm going to prescribe you this, it costs that, go forth and, you know, prosper.
Sure.
Now the patient's going to look that up and see alternatives, see different prices. Like, why didn't you prescribe me this?
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper and I can afford that and I will take it. And so I think we're starting to see that trend happen more. But the thing I think that's slowing us down the most is I can show you pricing all day, but unless you know it's there, inventory availability is so much more important as well.
Yeah.
Because I may be willing to pay different prices for things, but I gotta, before I drive to the pharmacy and go inside and talk about my coupon or whatever I have to pay for this thing and go back and forth there, I need to know that they actually have the medication. And once I know that, then I can make all the choices in the world.
Absolutely. And, you know, especially when you're not feeling well as a patient, you know, how much attention can you really pay to something like that? And so going back to something you said earlier is making that interface just easy and easy to understand, easy to use. What a great thing for patients to empower them and help them to start taking better control. And what kind of, you know, measurements will we see from that as far as our outcomes go when patients are the ones making the choices and having the control?
Yeah,
It'll be great to see.
I 100% agree. I think the mental model I have is that if you start with the patient first, with solving the problem for the patient first, then everything else will be much more seamless going upward. So the connections for all the interoperability is going to be so much better because everyone has the same goal. Right now, I think the goals are different. Like, I want speed. I want to, you know, I'm making revenue on this, or I'm trying to, you know, create this behavior. And those things are disjointed because I have my own goals. You know, my partner has their goals. This partner has their goal. But if the goal becomes very patient-centric, how do we get this patient to pick up their medications at the best price and most convenient for them to use it and get the right outcome that we want? If everyone has that goal, I think that's where you'll see a lot of this transformation happen a bit more seamlessly.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And I think that we could talk maybe all day about this, but we don't have all day, unfortunately. So I have one more fun question for you. I always like to end with a fun question. So tell me, what is the most adrenaline-seeking activity you have ever done?
Ooh, that is a good question. Let's think about that.
Is it researching medication adherence?
Yeah, spending a day on WebMD was one.
It's adrenaline, that's for sure.
I would say, I was in Bali.
Oh.
And I had never gone scuba diving before.
Oh.
And I thought that you're supposed to get like a lot of training and all these things. That's not what happened.
No.
I was in a boat, and they were like, all right, everybody go off on the side. And they were like, we'll teach you when you get down there. And I immediately got in the water. I panicked. And eventually I calmed down and I was about to touch a fish. He was like, oh, point the fish. And then the guy swims over. He's like, no, not that fish. And apparently that fish was not going to be good for me to touch. But that was my first and last time scuba diving because and I talked to my friends about it who had done the same thing. It's like, hey, that was a little treacherous area they had you scuba diving in for your first time.
Not to touch a rockfish.
And so I've realized now that I will only do it in like a pool or something like that.
Pool.
But like I am not doing open ocean.
Show you a lot of cool stuff in pools.
Yeah, I'm not doing open ocean again. So that was my mom was not happy about me just randomly signing a waiver and jumping in the ocean with no training. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being here today and having this interview with me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This is great.
That's a wrap on this episode of NCPDP Unscripted. Thanks for joining us as we explore the voices and ideas driving innovation in healthcare. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have topic ideas you'd love to hear us cover, we want to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay unscripted. Our podcast is proudly sponsored by Marks Productions.